नमस्कार, हमारी बजट कवरेज में आपका एक बार फिर से स्वागत है। तो बजट को किस तरीके से रेट किया जाए, ये जो बजट की स्पीच आज आई है, इसको कैसे देखा जाए? हमारे साथ हैं रुद्रा चैटर्जी, सीईओ ओबीटी और लक्ष्मी टी। आपका बहुत-बहुत स्वागत रुद्रा जी। पहले तो आपके इनिशियल इंप्रेशंस, आप किस तरीके से देखते हैं बजट को?
I think the budget, firstly, if you look at the background of where emerging economies like India are, with the multiple wars and increasing oil price and trade tensions, I think the first thing that needed to be done has been done, which is to keep the overall fiscal story intact. We are seeing what's happening in Kenya and Bangladesh. We don't want to have issues anywhere in that region where people question our fiscal stability. We are in a good position in that sense. I think the second area is about the unemployment, which is around 8%. I think the companies like OBT and Lakshmi, who employ huge thousands of people in tea industry and textile industry, I was hoping that there would be something which is an employment incentive to ensure कि ज़्यादा employees, the provident fund or other ways in which they can get an additional income. And we also are incentivized to employ more people. So I like the fact that there's an employment incentive. I think one of the issues is we have to understand that these are only for new employees. So it will take little more time to really come in, because people don't employ more people just because there's an incentive. You have to have that demand growth to create that additional number of people employed. But that this is certainly in the right direction. The market is reacting to the high capital gains tax, but I think if you needed to burst a little bit of bubble, this was a good time to do it. The stock market is buoyant, so to go have a slightly higher capital gains tax and maybe deflate the market in the short term, but hopefully strengthen the fundamentals in the long term, that is good. On the whole, I think this was a pragmatic budget, and that is what we need under the circumstances. There are good things happening in terms of government expenditure and capital expenditure. We need more private investment, but that will only happen when consumption happens. So that's my general view of the budget.
Mr. Chatterjee, the point that you mentioned about the market, as I look at the figures right here, the market is pretty much back. BSE Sensex above the 80,000 mark. So
Yes.
has had very little effect.
Right, that's
There
good.
may have been an immediate effect, but very little overall effect on the market. Having said that, this point that you made on employment incentive, and I think it was a very pragmatic thing on your part to say that just because there's an incentive, you won't go on hiring people. So in order to build an infrastructure where there are more jobs created, do you think this budget addresses that concern?
I think it has been addressing that concern over the years, year after year. What do you need for more jobs? You need more demand. You need better capex. The fact that they've increased capex from 9.5 lakh crores or 9.5 trillion rupees to 11.11 trillion rupees, that is very good. And that is, there is always going to be a lag between the investment and the jobs. But creating this, provident fund incentive, I think it's smart in two ways. One, it incentivizes employment, but as I said, it will happen over a couple of years, not not tomorrow. But it also encourages formal employment, because many people are in employment but don't get provident fund, which is something that happens in the informal sector. So I think everything that is happening in the country from a financial point is trying to bring all of this into the tax net, into the formal net. In the past, there might have been a lot of people who were getting 5,000 rupees in cash. They would say that, I'd rather have it with Provident Fund, because these incentives exist and the employer will also be incentivized. So I think this is not only going to create employment, but also a more robust formal structure of employment.
Mr. Chatterjee, you see, industries, particularly MSME, right? there was obviously they bled the most during COVID, and there was a lot done at least to restart the MSME sector, boost manufacturing, increase jobs. Uh, there was a lot of effort, extra effort, at least to make sure that happens. Now, we don't see that the results are as positive as they were envisioned, because your manufacturing has actually declined and it has not increased if you look at the estimates. So, in this budget, do you feel that this concern has been met, or what else needs to be done to boost the manufacturing sector and the MSME sector?
I think the story is actually goes a long, it's a deeper story, because what happened is a lot of the MSMEs are also not formal. So when, for example, let me talk about my own industry, in tea industry, a lot of MSMEs do tea packets. Now, tea packets used to have sales tax, which many of these MSMEs wouldn't pay. Now, when GST came, there was all input tax credit. So because of that, everybody came on this level playing field, and the bigger companies did better. The smaller companies did worse. Now, what has happened now is why a focus of MSME by giving, MSMEs are the biggest employers. So by giving employment incentives and also driving capex, which in the beginning helps only the large companies who can do those roads, but then it helps everybody who uses those roads. It brings the transport cost down. So there is a little bit of lagged indicator, and I think giving a little bit of help, incentives, uh, longer credit terms and other things that were done for MSMEs is short-term measure. The long-term will come because of the capex that has already been done. So the real advantage will happen because you are creating an infrastructure. In the meantime, we need some short-term, aids to ensure that they, retain, the number of MSMEs continue through this period.
Now I'm going to ask you the more difficult question. You see, the point is you've listed out a lot of things that, at least in terms of intention, are in the right direction. What do you think was a missed opportunity in this budget? What more could have been done?
So I think it is very important to start looking at industries like ours, tea, textiles, and say that how can we create Indian brands out of these companies? You're wearing Indian clothes, as I can see, and many of them are branded today. Could be Fab India, could be Manyavar, but there are very few of those. Especially when you travel out of India, you never see an Indian brand. In fact, you see, India has companies like Zara and Gap and H&M, but very few Indian brands abroad. India is the largest manufacturer of textiles. Why are we unable to go from this manufacturing to branding in textiles? The same thing as tea. We are the largest producer of tea, but nowhere in the world will you see Indian tea. You might see Indian tea inside a foreign brand. But we have to create a 5-year plan of saying that industry after industry, especially these large employing industry where India has a strength, goes from being just resources of the world to brands in the world. And that is something that we are good at. We are good at telling stories. India and China has a lot of things which China is better at. One thing India is much better at, we are very good at telling stories. We can create brands. And we can make, we have our own home consumption. Our unlike China, we didn't have the cultural revolution. So we continue, most Chinese people would not be wearing Indian clothes. They will be Chinese clothes. They'll be wearing Western clothes, wearing suits for their meetings. Or, those kind of things. We have a big opportunity of building Indian brands. And I think budget after budget, I heard the word brand today, but I didn't understand what was there in the brand, because that is something that we need to really focus on, creating great Indian brands. Saying out of, say, 100 global brands, can we say that 10 will be Indian? You have Apple and Coca-Cola, etc. But can we start having, some Indian textile brand? OBT has, branded carpets, and we have been selling branded carpets in different cities of India. But the goal is to have many more branded home furnishings, textiles,
But Mr.
tea,
Chatterjee, I mean,
cosmetics.
what can the government do? That is for individual businessmen to show their prowess and
So,
create successful brands. So, what is your expectation from a budget to facilitate this process of creating more Indian brands?
so
How
hundred
do you feel
percent,
limited? Let me
hundred
turn this
percent,
question around. Why do you
hundred
feel
percent. So,
limited?
so even manufacturing, when you do PLI, individual private sector companies do it. It's not that when you're doing employment incentives, individual private sector companies will employ. Similarly, creating a brand, there has to be, if you can do value addition or product development, those are areas where we need tax breaks and incentives to ensure Indian companies are doing it. It is not that I will be doing it whether it is going to have government incentives or not, but the scale at which you can grow will change with incentives, because these businesses, like today, going online and branding on Amazon, for 2 years you'll have to spend more money than you'll make. So for MSMEs to do that, it's okay for large companies to do that. For MSMEs to do that is difficult. So some kind of an incentive which basically says that, okay, we will encourage you to brand your own product instead of selling it in the auctions. Those are things that will help the smaller businesses and also larger businesses.
All right. Thanks very much, Mr. Rudra Chatterjee, for joining us. And let's hope that the budget from here on, or the revised estimates from here on, have some good news for you. All in all, on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you rate the budget?
I think it's 8 or 9.
Lovely. That is good. And you're saying that just to be nice to the government, or is that what you actually believe in?
No, I think, no, that's, I 100% actually believe, because it's important to do the work that they've done for CapEx. That is the long-term thing that is done. As I started saying, that the most important thing is to keep the economy secure from a macroeconomic point of view.
Yeah.
The fragility of the economy that we used to see in the past, that has gone. So those are the biggest issues. The reason I'm not saying 10 is because I would like some more tinkering in the areas I spoke about to ensure that really we create Indian brands which have become global, which I hope will happen in the next 5-10 years. You'll see many more Indian brands when we travel around the world.
Good. And I'm going to wear some of those. Thank you very much for your time, Rudra Chatterjee, for speaking on the budget. And by the way, that's a lovely watch that you're wearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My grandfather's.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, nice.